The Las Vegas Raiders are seemingly moving on from Jimmy Garoppolo. Aiden O'Connell doesn't look like the guy. They've got the 12th overall pick in the NFL draft this year. So that begs the question, where do the Las Vegas Raiders go at quarterback? That's what we're going to talk about today. Listen, sorry, they have the 13th overall pick. Let me correct what I said in the intro there. I've been talking a lot of football on this channel, and it's not going to stop because baseball season, I feel like it's not really worth talking about until about halfway through, like when we get to the All-Star break, right around there. And basketball, while I've enjoyed watching other teams, I've not enjoyed watching the Nets, and we'll certainly have a lot more content on this channel as we get closer to the playoffs. But football, the Super Bowl just happened. And I think now is such an exciting time for teams to plan out their offseason. And this year, there's a lot of teams that need quarterbacks, right? You could have a discussion about Chicago needing a quarterback. Washington needs a quarterback. New England needs a quarterback. Denver needs a quarterback. Minnesota doesn't have Kirk Cousins signed. The Raiders need a quarterback. Falcons need a quarterback. You can make an argument the Giants need a quarterback. There's a lot of situations that are up in the air, probably more that I can't even think of off the top of my head. And so it makes for an intriguing process through the offseason. Every year I do an episode with special guest Matthew Burwald, where a podcast episode where we guess the 32 starting NFL quarterbacks. And last year we were pretty accurate. There's always a few misses, right? You don't expect, for example, the Cardinals to trade Colt McCoy when he's expected to be the opening day starter and start Josh Dobbs, or what's another good example? The previous year, Zach Wilson to go down in the preseason and Joe Flacco to start those games. So it's always a little bit up in the air, but we did pretty good last year. I thought there was not a lot of confusion this year. It's a crapshoot. Rookies are always a mess to pick, and then you also got some veteran movement that could be possible. And the Raiders, I'm not certain where they fall on that. They're sitting here after last year where they paid Jimmy Garoppolo, and he was awful for them. And then they fire Josh McDaniels. Antonio Pierce comes in and makes a quarterback change right away. And Aiden O'Connell came in, rookie. He didn't look all too great. He's clearly not the quarterback of the future, in my opinion. And so where do the Raiders go from here? Coming into it, it looked like they were going to have Jimmy Garoppolo on the roster. Now, Jimmy Garoppolo has been suspended for 2 games for performance-enhancing drugs, which is hilarious, by the way. I think we can make an assessment of performance-enhancing drugs in baseball as to a conclusion that Barry Bonds should be a Hall of Famer. Because if Jimmy Garoppolo took performance-enhancing drugs that looked like he did last year, PEDs can't have helped Barry Bonds more than hitting a few extra home runs. But anyway, Barry Bonds should be a Hall of Famer. That's not the discussion for today's video. Back to the Raiders quarterback situation. Jimmy Garoppolo's suspension voids his contract. So the Raiders could get out of that. They can release him. And that's huge for them. You get rid of that salary. You get rid of that kind of a culture issue. It seemed like Jimmy Garoppolo and Josh McDaniels were very close from their days in New England. And when Antonio Pierce took over, it's clear the team did not like Jimmy Garoppolo and did not like Josh McDaniels. So you just rid yourself of that situation. But you do have to find someone to play quarterback. I saw an Instagram post from FanDuel projecting the Raiders to have Russell Wilson as their quarterback. I think there's no chance in hell that happens. Russell Wilson signed to the Denver Broncos. He's signed for 5 more years after this year, by the way. 5 more years after this year. The issue with him is that if they cut him, I believe their cap number goes up to something like 86 million in dead cap. So they can't cut him. They just can't. Next year will be a financial ruin if they do that. So they pretty much have to trade him, and I think they're going to end up having to give up assets to trade him unless some team is desperate. You could see a team like the Steelers making a trade for him, maybe the Falcons if they get desperate, but I don't know where he ends up, but I think it's highly unlikely he's cut. And for that reason, I don't think they're trading him to a division rival in the Raiders. Why would you? I mean, your division teams don't trade all too often, but for the Raiders to be able to enable the Denver Broncos to get off that salary and make a quarterback improvement, whether that's through the draft or through free agency, the Raiders are not doing that. So if it's not Russell Wilson, who is it? Right? They have the 13th pick in the draft. Could that be a rookie to be their week 1 starter? It could be. It could be a situation. They're not going to get a top 3 quarterback at pick 13. Certainly, pick number 1 is going to be a quarterback, whether that's Chicago or Chicago trades out of that pick and builds around Justin Fields. Either way, you assume that's a quarterback. You assume a quarterback's going 2nd overall to the Commanders. You assume a quarterback's going 3rd overall to New England. Similarly, if they don't take a quarterback, you could see a team moving up to that 3 or that 4 spot with Arizona and taking that third quarterback. And there seems to be a consensus top 3 quarterbacks in this draft. USC's quarterback, Caleb Williams, Drake May from UNC, and then Jaden Daniels, the Heisman Trophy winner from LSU. Then there's a little bit of a drop off and a little bit of mixed opinions. You have JJ McCarthy out of Michigan, you have Bo Nix out of Oregon, and Michael Penix Jr. out of Washington that all could go top half of the first round. It all could go back half of the second round, in my opinion. There's a lot of variance there with teams' opinions. So if the Raiders are in love with a guy like JJ McCarthy, he could be the guy. I don't necessarily believe that. I would have believed it a lot more if Jim Harbaugh would have been their head coach. But of course, he went to the Chargers and they rehired Antonio Pierce. Could see a guy like Michael Penix being drafted to the Raiders at 13th overall. I've had him in several mock drafts I've done on the channel. Check those out. Going to the Raiders, whether that's at 13 or the Raiders trading back into the first round to take him. So rookie's not off the table. If it's a veteran, I don't see them paying big money for a guy like Kirk Cousins, a guy who's one of the top free agents on the market this year. I don't know if that Kirk Cousins is necessarily staying in Minnesota or not staying in Minnesota, but I just don't see the Raiders swimming in those waters. So that leaves you in a situation where what are the other veteran quarterbacks available? Justin Fields could be available. I mentioned Chicago could trade out of that first overall pick and build around him. Alternatively, if they trade Justin Fields, maybe they stay at pick 1 and draft Caleb Williams. So maybe Justin Fields could be a guy for the Raiders. Maybe there's some other veteran backup that could be the play, right? Maybe they feel like drafting a kid and bringing in a guy like Joe Flacco to start the year, or Jacoby Brissett, or et cetera, that kind of caliber of quarterback. Maybe Baker Mayfield ends up leaving Tampa. I don't know. I don't think he will. But the question is, at the end of the day, is it going to be a rookie or is it going to be a veteran? And in my opinion, if it's a veteran starting week 1 for the Las Vegas Raiders, I don't see them finishing this season. I think they have a rookie they're going to end up taking. And it could be one of those top 6 guys. It could be the 7th, 8th guy. I don't think they're going to pay a veteran quarterback enough money to be able to be the franchise quarterback for years to come. Now, I could be wrong. And let me know what you think in the comments below. But I just can't see it. I just, for the life of me, can't see it. Maybe it's Justin Fields. Justin Fields is about the only one that I could see being a scenario for them. If they feel like he's the guy, maybe they make that trade. Now, what would the compensation be? I'm not sure. Mel Kiper Jr. is someone who thinks that it's going to be an early first-round pick for Justin Fields in return. If that's the case, pick 13 could go. I would be so shocked if it's a pick that high that gets traded for Justin Fields. I think it'll be maybe a late first round, but probably a second-round pick that ends up going for Fields. Maybe they do that. That's about the only veteran quarterback option that I think could be the solution there. At the end of the day, I think a short-term solution at quarterback is much more likely, and they draft a rookie to end up taking the reins. But let me know what you think in the comments below. The Raiders offseason is certainly an interesting one. They have the whole Devontae Adams situation, which I am as a Jets fan, am closely watching. They've got a lot of questions in the offseason. They got their head coach, at least, and that's a big step to solving those. But let me know what you think of the comments below of the Raiders situation. Subscribe if you haven't already. Like I said, I do a yearly podcast episode predicting all 32 quarterbacks with special guest Matthew Burwald, all 32 starting NFL quarterbacks week 1. So subscribe so you won't miss that. Click the little bell icon next to the subscribe button, and you'll get notified when that episode comes out, so you won't miss it. And yeah, I appreciate the support on this Quick Thoughts episode. Hope you enjoyed. Peace out.